All right, there you go. Okay, go ahead, Peggy.
Oh, good. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Peggy Norwood Stella. Some of you I actually may know, and some of you I don't know. So I'm just going to introduce myself. I'm so excited to be here and having this discussion with Kim Hallen, because you can trust me on this one. Every single time that Kim and I get together and start talking, the conversation just gets so incredibly rich and rewarding, and I learn so much from her wisdom of the horses. And I'm able to share my viewpoint from all the years that I have spent training and coaching human bodies in motion. So just the little bit about me and my background, because I think it's going to be really important as we move forward for you to understand where I'm coming from and why I'm so interested and committed to the concept of rest, and where that came from for me. Because as an exercise physiologist, as someone who has specialized and been educated in health and human performance, I was very much in the exercise and fitness world. And back in the 1990s, I became very entrenched in the weight loss industry. So I was actually known as sort of a national expert in exercise for weight control and weight management. As a result of this, I was a program director for the Duke University Diet and Fitness Center in the 90s. And some of you may be familiar with that, but it's a very prominent residential weight loss center in Durham, North Carolina, located at Duke University. From there, I also went to the Pritikin Longevity Center in Miami, Florida, and helped them with their program because they wanted someone with more of a background in working with the overweight patient. So there I went. And then from there came, I returned from Florida back to North Carolina and began doing a similar job at Structure House, which is a behaviorally based weight loss program. So when I say behaviorally based, it was predominantly a psychologically based program, and did a lot of teaching on shifting behaviors around food and for the purpose of weight loss. So giving that little blip just to let you know that my expertise is entrenched in the diet and fitness industry. However, it was my observation over years of being in that industry and participating in teaching and coaching weight loss that I realized that those who were, I'll say quote unquote, successful in losing their weight actually had behaviors that, to me, more resembled an eating disorder, or at least disordered eating patterns, rather than what I would call a healthy lifestyle. It was also quite evident that many people went home and gained the weight back, considering themselves a complete failure, would return to the program in shame and despair. And it became really difficult for me to continue to feel that I was doing the right thing in offering my education in exercise and weight loss. And for years, I was dedicated, absolutely convinced that what I was teaching was the right thing to do. And then what happened eventually was that the Structure House program where I was working was bought out by a residential behavioral health program that's like a worldwide, they're called CRC Health. They bought the place and it was turned in sort of like a residential treatment center for weight loss. And at that moment, they asked me to go in to become a marketer and to begin marketing the program. And I began seeing a little more closely the numbers on what we were doing and realizing that, hey, the most money was being made from people returning on program, not from the people who initially attended the program. And that just didn't sit very well with me. So after a while of kind of becoming more and more uncomfortable with the diet and fitness industry, I left it. I resigned from my position, and I was determined that I wanted to explore an alternative. I wanted to explore something that could be better than continuously focusing on weight, because I think we all already know that when that weight loss isn't a guarantee that it's going to stay that way. So that pursuit of energy balance through food and exercise almost seems like an exercise in futility. It doesn't do what it's supposed to do. And this is where I could go on and on and on. But I think that we all, there may be some who are, that you're still clinging to the idea that if only I could lose weight and I could be healthier, I know I could do this. But that puts so much onus and so much onto you, and the thing that you are feeling totally responsible for that. And I'm just here to say that that is not the case. And I've spent the last 10 years delving into what can be better. And it actually, I have found, kind of comes down to, what do we need to pay attention to? Where does our energy need to go? Where do we need, to be focusing instead of on weight loss? What can we focus upon that will lead us to the healthy lifestyle that we're looking for? Because we all want to be healthy. We all want to be vital. We want that. And so how do we do that? And that's why what's happened is I've determined that there's a couple of things that were far better to do, if you want it, like very simple: move your body, one, and two, quiet your mind. So there's those two very, very simple principles. And what I have been working on is first the movement piece, and trying to find a way to develop a program or a foundation for people to move their bodies and begin to change the attitude that we have towards exercise as something that we do to our bodies, and instead look at movement as something we do with our bodies. There's, to me, a sense of kindness and respect and mutual trust that's developed in my gentle, easy moves, for example. And some of you may or may not be familiar with that concept of gentle, easy moves, but it's really what I call an opportunity to play in the body as opposed to working out the body. That you can actually play in the body and explore all the movements and possibilities that it has. So that's one piece of it. But then realizing too that the in the energy piece, the balancing of energy is super important, and it doesn't have to do with counting calories. So here now, so talk about the exercise piece. Now I want to look at, say, this whole diet piece. I want to know why why it is that we are feel guilty around food. Why is it that when we are hungry, we have a dilemma around what to eat? Right? There's all of this that's so wrapped up in our attitude and feelings around our bodies and not being enough, that we really need to not continue to pull our attention away from that that's caused us such anguish in our lives, and find the way to do it better, and that feels better to us. And that way, that's what is in finding your energy, is actually focusing on your energy, not your calories. It's the one way our body has of communicating. There's many ways our body communicates with us, but this is one way our body communicates with fatigue. The same way it says, I'm hungry, it says, I'm tired. And Kim and I have even had conversations about, when did it get to be that it wasn't okay to eat and to rest? And we really want, really want to explore why we feel such an angst around food and resting. And that's why I find, that is why I have explored and have come up with this idea of the ABCs of rest, because finding that energy balance for ourselves, to be able to not walk around feeling depleted, to me, that's the key to health. That's the key to well-being, both physical and mental well-being. That we are getting and walking around in energy balance as best we possibly can, and beginning to, as we become more aware, beginning to shut off those voices from diet culture and hustle culture that are telling us, those messages that we're bombarded with every single day, telling us it's not okay to eat and telling us it's not okay to rest, because it is. And we have to eat and we have to rest. And so this begins out now in my exploration, and someone goes, well, how on earth did horses get into this whatsoever? But I will tell you that it was one day out, as I'm just observing the horses in the pasture, and some are lying down and some are, standing watch. And I went, it's like I had seen that behavior over and over, and yet it hit me one day. It's like, oh my goodness, they have a sense of community around rest. And those that feel they need to rest get to rest. And those that need to take another role, take that role. And it's community. It is, and to kind of move along with what we're saying, herd intelligence, that they are as a community providing what they need for each other. And we don't do that very well. And therefore, it became really, really important for me to seek out ways to, how can we be a better community for each other? How can we support each other in rest? So that's what inspired me. I started a group on Facebook called Rest Seekers. And I'm not, Kim, I'm not even sure if we met through Rest Seekers or there may have been through a horse community. I'm not exactly sure, but anyway, you guys get the general idea, and I don't want to occupy too much because I want Kim to be able to talk about her perspective. But I just feel like it was super important for me to be able to share that I'm coming to this with this idea of justice, right? Of finding a sense of social justice for all of us. That we are all being manipulated by a culture who thinks it's okay to tell us we don't deserve to rest, and it's not. So we can't necessarily change the culture, but we can begin to become aware enough to change within ourselves and to seek out the community that's going to support that so that we can support each other. And that's why I'm more than thrilled that I've been able to team up with Kim Hallen, because she's provided a sense of that support and community for me, for the ideas that we share in common. We came to the same conclusion from two completely different places. And that's why I just want, I want to turn this over now to Kim to share her story so that you know more about her and how we came together. So thanks, Kim.
Awesome. Thank you, Peggy. Welcome, everyone. And yes, I was trying to remember too, Peggy, where we met. Definitely got to know each other through your Rest Seekers group. I'm not sure if that's where we met too. We're on some of the same horse groups on social media. Peggy and I have known each other for a couple of years now. Never have actually been together in person, although we're planning on something for that. But,
yeah, we're going to do that soon.
Yeah. But yes, so some of you know me, those who don't, my name is Kim Hallen. I live outside of Charleston, South Carolina, and I am what I call the equine inspired soul guide and founder of a business called Unbridled. And what I do through Unbridled is offer experiential learning that immerses people into the experience of being part of a horse herd. So in doing that, what it's really all about is very similar to what Peggy has done in terms of she's working to disentangle people from the mindset of the diet industry and the pieces of that. From being immersed in it, she realized how unhealthy it actually was for people. And my experience was kind of the same thing, but in the horse industry. So I spent most of my life entrenched in just sort of the traditional, or even the fringes of the traditional part of the horse industry, because I always leaned toward the more, natural horsemanship and then positive reinforcement aspects of training. And it was actually the experience I had with one of my horses who developed a very serious injury young in her life. She was the horse that I was going to become, this great trainer with, and, show the world everything that we could do with all I knew about training. And with her injury, one, that was a life-changing injury for her. So physically, she wasn't going to be able to do what I had dreamed we were both going to do. And the other piece was that I was so focused on her physical healing that I was not prepared to support her emotionally through healing. And also, I was having so much trouble letting go of my own agenda and goals, my own ego and identity being wrapped up in what I thought our life was going to be, that I couldn't be there present emotionally for her. And long story short, with her, she became very aggressive when she had to be stalled and treated. And I thought I could train that out of her with discipline, with systems similar to what the diet industry is. And that did not work. I could manage her behavior. I did not heal our relationship. And so because of my love for this horse, I sort of got forced, because I picked the relationship over the goals, to step out of everything that I knew. I had to shed everything I thought I knew about forcing training a relationship between me and this horse. And in order to do that, in any relationship that's healthy, we have to first understand who the other is, right? So I had to back off and spent years trying to understand who she was and what it was that she wanted. What did she need from me in order for us to heal this relationship? So I went on a long journey of learning all about horse behavior, all about how to read body language, and particularly about going back and studying wild horses. What did they evolve to be? What is their evolutionary intelligence telling them about who they are and what they need? So everything I teach is kind of about that. When people come to Unbridled, there's no halters or lead ropes. There's no training. There's no goal or agenda we have to accomplish with the horses. It is actually the opposite. It is about us letting go of all that and then just entering into the world of the horses, spending time with them in the pasture, in their environment, and learning how to relate to them as the natural beings that they are. And in doing that, what I discovered is it helps us remember the more primal parts of ourselves. When we can let go of our identity as it's wrapped up in that, we remember that we're just like them in so many ways. Obviously, there's a lot of ways horses and humans are different. But back to what Peggy and I, where we connect, is where we're the same as horses, is that we all have the same parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems. We all have fight or flight, rest or digest. And as prey animals, horses could live constantly in that fight or flight nervous system. And in the human society, what we've created is a world where we are often living in that fight or flight, some level of activation of fight or flight, whether we recognize it or not. And what I discovered by stepping back and observing horses rather than being focused on what I wanted to turn them into or get from them was that horses are masters. Because they're prey animals, they are masters at activating. I always get parasympathetic and sympathetic mixed up. So Peggy, you can help me. But the rest and digest, which one is that?
Oh, that's the rest and digest is parasympathetic.
Parasympathetic. Okay, so the parasympathetic nervous system. And that's what they evolved to do. And so they can teach us a tremendous amount about that. We have turned horses into, using our human perspective, we like to think of horses as these supreme athletes, right? And these supreme specimens of physical ability and athleticism. Yes, they can be that. They have that aspect of them. That aspect evolved for one reason only, and that is to save their lives when they are under attack. They don't have a lot of other mechanisms. Their survival thing is their athletic ability and acuity, that they can run fast, they can jump, they can turn on a dime, they can do all kinds of things that we have used to our own purposes now, but that is actually not what horses do most of the time. They spend all of their time actively doing the kinds of things that activate their rest and digest system. So they are masters of efficiency. This was such a paradigm shift for me when I realized that that's what horses actually are, which is totally different than what I had learned that they are. And it also helped me understand why there are so many manifestations of dysfunction of horses in the domestic world. Horses that have ulcers, colic, physical injuries, anxieties, cribbing, weaving, like we think it's bad when they're herd bound, like think they have separation anxiety. Well, no, actually being with the herd and with their healthy community is part of what they rely on to be able to stay in a balanced mental and emotional state. When we take them away from their herd, we're taking away one of the primary things they have to feel safe. And so we are working in opposition to their natural way of being most of the time. And that's part of the reason there's so much behavior issues and dysfunction in horses in the domestic world. And I realized that what we're doing to them, we're doing to ourselves. And so I was already understanding all of this. And then I meet Peggy. And three of the things that I teach or that come up all the time in the experiential learning is how horses use alignment, balance, internal and external balance, and connection to access health and vitality in their herds and peaceful communities. And so when I met Peggy and she told me she's working on this program called the ABCs of Rest, and guess what ABC is? Alignment, balance, connection. We had hit on exactly the same things. And I realized through her that obviously our body is a natural system, right? Our body has evolutionary intelligence. We don't even often have to think about some of the things just happen on their own. And all of that's makes the human body work well and be healthy is also what makes community work and be healthy as well, that in the natural world. So we realized that we're actually having the same conversations, the same epiphanies, but in two different contexts that now make it a whole. So Peggy works on kind of the internal, humans working within their body and their body systems. And I look at it as how can we take ourselves in the external world and immerse ourselves in what is a much healthier and more natural model of living in community, so that actually you can learn it in two ways experientially. And it's super powerful. And so we're excited about this collaboration. We've been working on I don't want to like jump into this too much, but Peggy, I'm just going to mention it. We've been working on this virtual retreat that we're getting ready to launch, where it combines a lot of what she's learned and what's the tools that she's put together, which are amazing. Her BMI, her new BMI, which is body mind intelligence, and something called Vimdex that she's created, which is a measure for Vim vigor and energy. Beautiful tools, and combining that with some of the things that I've learned about herd behavior and using some herd observation exercises to what both of us really want is we don't want other people to have to spend as much time, energy, and effort following the wrong route
Yeah.
that we both have. That if we can make this journey easier for others, and it's such a paradigm shift, it's not easy, it's not an easy shift to make, mentally and emotionally, to let go of all this conditioning we've had. It's actually quite hard. And so I think having the two pieces together could be very powerful for those who are interested in making the shift and just having all those tools together to help with that. So that's a little bit about me, and that's a little bit about how Peggy and I are connected and why we're so excited about this.
Yeah. Excited. I'm going to tell you, I'm like, have never been as excited about an offering that I have done in my work, just in the work that I've done throughout my career as I am about this particular offering, the ABCs of Rest, simply because I think this collaboration, Kim, has just brought a dimension to the work that I've, been, trying to do with humans, but to bring in the beauty of the equine and the wisdom that they have to offer to us just makes just the perfect spot to sit and learn about yourself. Which just brings me another one of the ABCs of rest, which kind of ties right into what we're talking about, is awareness and boundaries and community. And that awareness really has to do with our, noticing, paying attention to how we are responding at any given moment. What are we what are, not only is what's coming our way, but what are we putting out into the world, and finding that, we kind of have to find the right balance for us. And in doing so, we have to learn to set the right boundaries. And so when we're talking about our paradigm shifts or rejecting the diet culture mindset, that is a boundary. That's just setting a boundary for ourselves, so that then we can become community. It's not setting a boundary to isolate from community. It's setting a boundary so everyone understands their role. So it's not anarchy, it's community. And it's just a kind of a nice way of embracing these ideas of rest and digest, doing it for ourselves and doing it for our community, doing it the same for others. So that's the goal, I think, of what we're trying to accomplish with the ABCs of rest.
Absolutely. And something, Peggy, that came to mind when you talked about those boundaries that probably all of us can relate to is the craziness that social media is right now, right? And how
Yes.
I think most of us at this point have started to realize that we have to put some boundaries in place in terms of whether we interact with that at all, and if we do, how we do. And it's that same idea of if we want to cultivate and explore a different way of being in the world, we have to put boundaries around creating a safe space so that we can
Yes.
explore that, or we can stay focused on that and not be distracted or pulled into that fight or flight response again all the time. Like, right,
Mhm.
we only learn also when we feel safe. That is the best
Yes.
environment for us to be in a learning frame of mind. So that's the other goal, is by creating something that's, yeah, it's enrollment based and all that, but that's so that it can be a safe community where we know that everybody who's enrolled in that and who's participating in it, just like this, you guys signed up for this
Yeah.
because of the way that we advertised it, right? And you had to take an extra step and register to be here today. We didn't just make this wide open for anybody. And that was a way of kind of screening to say, we're going to bring together people who are interested in learning about this and are interested in looking at things from a different perspective. So that's another piece of what we're doing, is wanting to just create an environment where it's safe to just go, maybe it's vulnerable, maybe it feels like I don't quite get this, but something about it seems right, but I can't quite make the jump, but I'd like to explore it a little more in a safe environment and not have that external judgment and all those things coming at us as we explore it. So I think that's whatever you do, whether you decide you want to go on with us and participate in that or not, what I really hope you guys, everybody here takes from this is the importance of boundaries and find a safe community to explore some different ways. Obviously, what we're doing isn't working real well, right?
Right.
In society right now. And rejecting the diet industry doesn't mean we're rejecting health. In
No.
fact, where Peggy and I are is we understand that rejecting the diet industry is a way of embracing health in a more holistic way. And that shift, that's really hard when we're stuck in losing weight is how we get healthier. There's a lot of other things we can do that actually will help us manage weight in a healthier way without having to
Right.
focus on that.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. Because it's a tough one. And again, Kim and I have had this discussion that body weight is a highly sensitive, touchy subject for a lot of people, because we've been entrenched in that messaging from that, $70 billion diet industry. We've been entrenched in the messaging, but it's not just, and it isn't just their messaging. It's generational. It was given to, we've learned this. It is absolutely entrenched practically in our DNA, how much we do listen to that. So now I'm going to talk about A for alignment. We have to choose. We have to choose where we align. Do we choose to align with that message that we are not good enough until we are a certain weight, right? That we are not good enough? Do you want to align with that message? And now I'm going to give another message. Do you want to align with the message that says that your value comes from your hustle, from your productivity? Only what you can produce, that's where your value is, instead of realizing that you are enough, and finding and aligning with that. And now we're going to go back to balance. We are constantly in that flow between where we choose to align. We're going to be pulled one way or the other. And I'm going to share, I think we talked about this, Kim, I think before, but I want to share a little bit. I think it just kind of helps to make sense of what we're talking about. But you can actually think of ourselves as living in two, kind of in two planes. We have like an earthly plane, right? And our body is very much a part, our human body is very much a part of that earthly plane. But we also are part of an energy, right? An energetic system, or I'll call it the divine or the source, right? Which is, I consider to be sort of a vertical, if we want to look at it that way, that, or, that we have there, here we are, Earth, or here our humanity and our divinity right here. And here's a connection. Okay, right here is the connection, right where they come together. But we're constantly in a flux and flow of where is our energy going? Is it being drawn towards these things that we attach to here and on Earth, or are we more in alignment? Are we more in alignment with what we know is our greater good, not just for ourselves, but for all? And you can't, it's impossible to live just one way or the other. We're constantly flowing between the two. But what is happening is our energy is constantly being drawn. It's like a weight that's being put on us, or that we were constantly being drawn into these messages that are no longer relevant to us. We're constantly being drawn back to it, and we have to kind of continuously, how do I shift back towards and aligning with what I know is in my best interest? How do I do that? And so it's that constant, right? Alignment, balancing, and that's the connection. We are human, and we are sublime and divine, and we are energy, and we are solid matter. And so it's like finding that that flow and flux between the two, and being okay with it, like to be all right. It's like we're not trying to fix anything, so to speak. We're not like, this isn't a fix. This is a realignment. It's just a shift for us so that we can be free to live to live with the health and well-being that we seek, as opposed to performing to the standards that may or may not apply to us. If I'm making sense with that. Yeah. So I'll let you sort of explore that as well from your perspective, Kim.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way I look at it, kind of breaks us totally out of this human realm of, when we think about spirituality and all that, we tend to think of religion, right? Human religion, right. Human systems. I look at everything from the natural world perspective, and humans are really the only living beings that have religion as we know it, right? So I just set that aside, and I look at, in the natural world, take us aside, and we're just looking out at everything else that's in the natural world, the plants, the animals, the systems. There is this balance, and they naturally seem to stay. So we've got these two, they stay in balance between their present and their physical existence, right? You look around and you see that they're actually present in the day-to-day. What am I doing right now? What's happening right now? What's the weather doing? What do I need to do? What season is it? They're alive in the actual physical realm of being alive on this planet. And yet they all stay, I don't want to say in their lane, but kind of within the larger evolutionary system or cycle of life. Every species has its role to play. And when they stay in alignment with their earthly existence and their healthy communities, they naturally stay in their proper place. in that larger cycle and system. And they trust that whether it's rational or not rational, the rest of the world has their back, right? We as human beings play a role. We have 10,000 species of microbes that live on our skin or within our gut, right? We are, without doing anything, just by existing, we are part of this natural cycle of life, and we can't really stop playing that important role. But how often do we think about that? How often we think it's gross to think about all these things living on our body and in us, although our immune system actually requires those bacteria and microbes to be in perfect balance in order for us to be healthy. We should be looking at how do we need to live so that that microbial system stays in balance. How do horses have to live? I've studied this a great deal about what do horses need in their diets? What do they not need? What kinds of the things that we feed them in the domestic world, these processed foods, mess up their digestive systems. Nature's already in perfect balance and we are part of nature. Our bodies were created as part of nature. Our bodies are a perfect balanced system if we don't mess it up.
Yeah.
And so horses remind me about, it's not so much about fixing things. We have in this mindset in the human world that we need to fix everything. And horses remind me that no, we need to stop trying to fix and we need to realign with what is natural and balanced. So that's kind of where it all comes together, but it all fits so perfectly. It's the same, again, the same messaging, but for me, it's really helpful to hear it from both different perspectives. Because one perspective is going to resonate with some people better or at certain times or certain topics, and then the other perspective is going to resonate more for others. So I think that together it helps, it will help more people sort of get to the same place, even if the mechanism or the avenue there isn't exactly the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we kind of hit on like the gist of it. If you have something else you want to add, Peggy, if not, I guess we could open it up and see if there's any questions or comments. What are you feeling?
Yeah, I was just going to add, because as you were talking about what the horses do so well in terms of remaining in balance, right, remaining part of like their earthly existence. And for us, we call it grounding, right? Or if you've heard that term of grounding is becoming a little closer to our earthly, right? An earthly self. Not necessarily being and saying like being dragged down by the burdens or messages that don't apply to us, but instead knowing where our place is and being grounded. And feeling that. And so what a lot of when I'm teaching in that, human body perspective is that how to feel grounded. So there's, ways with the movements that that I teaches that feeling of groundedness in a very easy, simple way. It's sort of achieved, like some people practice yoga. And I think yoga is a wonderful practice, but I feel like these gentle, easy moves that I introduce actually kind of come in even at a more foundational place. That with the practice of gentle, easy moves, you can easily apply them to a yoga practice or to a more advanced, exercise form, whatever that may take.
Can I add something real quick on that? Because
yeah.
I've, of course, done yoga, and then I've done some of Peggy's gentle, easy moves. And first of all, I want to say that the gentle, easy move, like anybody, any age, anybody can do these. And they are so grounding. And what they do for me is more than yoga, because sometimes with yoga, I feel like I'm really pushing myself. And that sometimes takes me out of my body a little bit. Into more the pain experience. I don't know, it's a part of my body, but it's not that grounded centering part of my body. And the gentle, easy moves, they're so gentle, they just let you notice, oh, that little shift feels really good. That feels more alignment. Like, I mean, it's amazing how breaking it down into these simple, gentle, easy moves really brought me much more into my body, in awareness of my body, and feeling friendly toward my body.
Yeah, and very,
Yeah.
very, very kind. Yeah.
Yes,
And,
very kind.
and not a performance, not based on performance at all. And I think that's sometimes what we get caught up in our exercise programs, is that we get so focused on, am I doing this right? Am I, and this is not that at all. As a matter of fact, the whole purpose is, the purpose is for you to be present in your body, to begin to feel safe in your body, and to be grounded. So just to let you know that those gentle, easy moves will be a part of the ABCs of rest, because it's all about alignment, balance, and connection.
Yeah, excellent. Well, we've got like 10 minutes left. So let's open it up. If anybody has any questions or comments about what we've said, does any of it resonate, or does it not make sense? Or you want to just like blow a hole in it completely? You know, we'd love to hear what you have to say. I'll unmute everyone or ask you to, in case you have anything you want to say.
Kim, I have a question, if it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thank you both. This has been super interesting and very resonant with what I have going on in my life right now. With all the talks that we've had, Kim, I don't know if we've talked about this specifically, like, when you're a person who's gone through chronic trauma, you have a certain degree, I think, of social isolation that happens, and distorted experience of interactions with other people often. So I'm wondering, with horses, like, it seems like virtually any horse who has been worked by the horse industry, who's been overworked, overtrained, overstalled, like all of those things, is going to have trauma, like extensive chronic trauma. Are they able to come back into balance just by virtue of coming into a herd, or do they need support? And if so, what kind of support? I'm sure this is stuff you're going to get into during the retreat, and I don't know if there's a simple answer to that.
It's a great question though, Kate. And I would say that the answer is, it depends what kind of trauma it was. So a horse that has been isolated most of its life, living in stalls or isolated paddocks, and wasn't raised in a herd community, may need support learning how to be in a herd and read herd body language and understand what healthy community in a horse herd feels like. So some of those horses might actually need help from humans, some intervention, make sure that integration can happen safely, and they can kind of learn in a somewhat safe environment without feeling bombarded. The other is that horses that have been socialized with other horses and are okay in that realm, but have had trauma in their interactions with people, usually can go back into a herd, and a lot of their health gets restored just from being alone in a herd. But if the expectation is that they need to be able to interact with humans and be in relationship with humans, they need a lot of support healing that part of the trauma. And horse on horse, herd living will not help heal that part of the trauma. So it's a little bit twofold. And some horses have had both. But you are absolutely right. And this is something that the horse industry hates to hear. But my experience is that any horse that has sort of been forced or coerced, even through positive reinforcement training, to become what we want them to be versus who they are. It's the same trauma that we get in the domestic world, where we have all this pressure to become what society says or what's religion says, whatever, right? That creates trauma. It takes us away from our innate evolutionary wisdom of what balance and health is. And so we then have to do a lot of work to unravel. That's the name of my business, about unplaying ourselves, horses and human, from all of that stuff. So it's a great question. I hope that's a bit of an answer.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. What other questions you guys have? Is this a shift in your perspective at all? It's not anything new, I don't think, but it's definitely, hopefully, a little bit different way of looking at it.
I just wanted to thank you and Kim and Peggy for sharing what you have spent several years trying to put together, and a lot of us spend a lifetime trying to put it
Yeah.
together. It obviously speaks of where a lot of us would like to be, whether that's easy to get there. I think there's something that's always kind of innate with a lot of people, not with everybody, but that striving to make that little vertex that you talked about, where the earthly plane hits the divine plane. I think that's something that's, whether we're aware of it, I think we're always trying to figure out how to make those planes align. And some of us go at it in a very organized way. Others go at it in a almost spastic way. But I think that's something that's innate in the human spirit, to try to figure out where that vertex is for each of us.
Right.
But I applaud you in trying to get all of this into a world of language, because fortunately or unfortunately, that's where a lot of us function. So it's necessary almost that we can hear a language that we can understand, to help us continue to work on alignment and balance and connection and community, because it's obviously absolutely vital. It's the only way we're going to make this whole planet Earth come together again. So thank you.
Absolutely. And interestingly, I think where Peggy and I have gotten is the answer is actually pretty simple. It's the untangling and disentangling that is really complicated. The natural world has the answer. It's all around us. It's about realigning back with our own bodies, back with its body intelligence, back with nature intelligence. But the unraveling is what's really complicated. And so whatever you do going forward, I would encourage you to look for support, people, programs, activities that can help you simplify, bring it back down to the most simple, and everything that feels really complicated and hard. That's probably our innate intelligence saying that it's not the right track. Not that everything in nature is simple all the time, but it's way more simple than what we as humans are trying to live with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
I think I think what you're mentioning, Kim, though, is something in the last whatever number of years, that there's simple, uncomplicated is not the same as easy. And just trying to dissect that out and say, exercise is important. And exercise is not easy, but finding an exercise, whether it's your essential moves but finding some exercise that works well with your body, that is so important. But then you still have to do it. Like you have to not just make time, but you have to put the physical energy in it, and finding the balance of what that is. Like, interestingly, in the last few years, I've figured out that if I exercise too hard in one session, that I have problems with that, not just, body aches, but actual, what I think is probably cortisol issues. And anyway, but just not thinking of things that, I guess what you're talking about with the vertex idea of the grounding and the spiritual is understanding that it's a little more almost calculus-like area under the curve. It's not a point so much as it's an equilibrium. And well, this is the name of your talk, so I guess it's more of kind of it's more of kind of a constant, there's effort and there's energy involved, but it's finding where you're, I guess, putting your energy that's not useful. And so you're conserving that energy, but also there's going to be energy expenditure and finding that balance, I guess. So but this has been really interesting to think about it and really, you know, put names to it and stuff.
Peggy, did you want to respond to that at all?
Yeah, well, it's like, it's because like the exercise piece is, you're right. It's important to us because it's a maintenance tool. You know, it's a way of enhancing our physicality in a way that we can do more and explore more and, you know, expand that way. I love exercise, you know, for that potential. It also allows for there to be a physical energy return. So there's a physical energy expenditure in that activity itself, but in essence, it's like a banking, right? You get energy in return because you've improved your physicality.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lesson in that for us. You know, that effort and that we put into that, and there's the return of that energy and gives us potential for even more. So that the more we improve our physicality, actually, the more we are able to expend the energy physically and get it back. But it's also, along with that, the recovery piece, and this is what I love to just emphasize, the rest and recovery and that balance that has to be achieved from the exercise itself, because it's not when you're out there doing it that you're getting better. It's when you allow the rest and recovery. I think that the exercise, and I'm glad you brought that up, Jen, because I think exercise serves as a really beautiful example for what we're talking about. There's a struggle with that. There's a resistance with that. And then at the same time, there's a return on that. So thank you for bringing that up.
Absolutely. And what I can learn from horses is I tend to steer away from that term exercise because that's our human term. And that's why I like what you say is movement, because I don't think there's any animals that think about, I'm out exercising. Right? They're moving. Life is movement. When we're in balance with the natural rhythms of life, like it's not a stationary sport. Living is not a stationary sport. Rest, yes, rest can sometimes require stationary, although there's other types of rest that don't always. Movement that feeds us can be very restorative.
That's right.
Taking a gentle walk on the beach. Me, anytime I'm walking through nature, I'm moving, but it's very restorative. And I don't then require a lot of other stationary rest to recover from that. And I think we humans are so far removed from, so what I learned from horses is that they're in constant motion, even if it's slowly grazing, taking a step here or there, they are hardly still. Out of 24 hours a day, there's a couple hours where they're still. Nothing like our 8 hours of sleep. But it doesn't have to be this intense exercise and then intense sleep. Like we tend to be like, we're going to do it in spurts and then we have to recover in spurts. It's an ongoing, more of a balanced rhythm. And I think that's what Peggy's work can help us find, is incorporating in our life a more balanced flow of movement, not just that is draining movement, because exercise to me, when I'm making myself exercise, even if I enjoy the movement, it's kind of draining because it's this forced thing, right? I have to make time for it. I have to figure it out. I have to, put on the right equipment and shoes or bike or whatever, right? Versus just natural movement that's while I'm doing the things that help me, whatever. There's all kinds of ways that you can think about it in your own life. And for everybody, it's a little different. But I do think there's particular types of movement that humans evolved to do. Walking being one of them that we don't do nearly enough of anymore. And it should be part of our everyday life. And if we have the more kind of natural movements that humans evolved to do, I don't know that we need as much like formal exercise to stay healthy. So these are the kinds of things that are just shifting, and they do require changes to the way that we live. That can seem overwhelming, but there's also ways to look at it in little shifts sometimes can make a really big difference for us. Yeah. And for horses too.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're at like 12:02. Thank you guys for being here with us and participating in this conversation. And we will be sending out information about the ABCs of rest, the retreat that's coming out, in case you're interested. And I think Peggy even has created a coupon for those of you who participated here and are in each of our kind of learning communities, where it's like $50 off on it. So again, this is just no pressure to do that. We wanted this to be a standalone, kind of open your mind, shifting some perspectives. But if anybody wants to kind of dive deeper with us, we will be sending out information about the ABCs of rest.
That's right. Oh, this is a thank you everyone for joining us. This has just been, it's a good, there's so much we could keep saying. I'm like, oh. So I'm saying, but we're out of time. We'll have to explore this again in the future. But great conversation. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Y'all have a great day.
Thank
You
you.
too.